Saber-X Studios presents. Hey guys, thanks for coming onto the podcast, Juice It Up. Last week, I took a break, and then this week, as you can probably tell, I don't have a guest. It's just going to be me. And I get that, Nashville's been pretty hectic these last couple weeks, with the tornadoes going on, this whole coronavirus shenanigans just happening, and all that piled on top of everything that we all have in our busy lives just makes it really hard for people to come out here where I live and be a part of this. So I'm going to do a better job of making this more mobile. And I do apologize. It's kind of my fault too. My job necessarily isn't very forgiving. Um, I work in radio. I've been working in radio for a few years. And I actually got called last Wednesday on my way home from work from my boss. And he was asking me if I could go to some of the tornado victims' homes and interview them and get some sound bites from them. We were trying to raise some money, spread awareness, get people more involved, whether that was going out and moving debris themselves or donating funds. And so I was asked to go and do that. And that was really weird. I said yes, obviously. I'm not in a position where I want to move up. I'm not really going to tell my boss no, but that's still like an uneasy thing to go to some people's homes that were destroyed and, ask them for their story. It seems kind of like underhanded, just a little bit, right? You can't just go to someone's home and not help them like rebuild it. So that was my thing, is I was going to go and I was going to help them rebuild. And then after like a half hour or an hour of doing that, get their story from it. And so that's what I did. The next day I woke up at 8 to leave at 9 because I told my boss I was going to leave at 9, but I woke up and I didn't want to leave. I just didn't. It just felt so weird to me, right? And but I ended up leaving, at 9:45-ish. Because I was like, I need to do this. It's my job. I told my boss I was going to do it, so I went out and did it. I started out going to Donaldson, Tennessee, which is, East Nashville. And there was this one community near the Donaldson Christian Academy that had gotten hit really hard by the tornadoes. And they had this whole relief effort. There was an organization there helping, divvy out people to certain places. And they had like a bunch of snacks, water, and everything, and gloves if you needed it. I brought my own gloves, so I was good, and my own boots. And essentially my plan was to go around to all of the houses that got absolutely demolished, the ones that got hurt the most, because that's who would have the best stories, really, but also because they're the ones who needed help the most, right? So that was sort of a win-win for me. So I went to this one house, and a sweet lady was living there. Her son, her, and her daughter were all there cleaning up the wreckage. And they had a bit of a crew going on. They had like 5 people there just, clearing the house because the whole house had just collapsed. The first and second floors were not there. It was just a pile of bricks and, stuff that was in the house, right? And their basement was safe. And the basement was safe, but there were so many bricks and just rubble on top of the basement that it was about to cave in. And that's actually where her family was during the tornado. And she didn't make it to the basement. She somehow, she gave me her story after I helped out. She immediately, she wanted to go to the basement and then got immediately, the house exploded, in front of her. So she took cover and she only had minor scratches, not even that bad, barely touched at all. Absolutely miraculous, because that house was not there anymore, guys. And she was thankful for me helping out, because I stayed there for a good hour. We moved bricks out of the way. I took out a whole, kitchen island, sort of. We had to take it out because insurance was paying for everything, was replacing everything, so we had to clear it all out. That didn't help finish everything because I had to move on, try to help out other people, because at this point they had a good crew going, maybe 7 to 10 people helping out. Not everyone had that, so I tried to find, and I had my story as well. So I went on to move to another man, he and his wife. there was like 3 people at their house when I got there, and a little similar to the first one, house was completely demolished, except their bathroom walls were intact, and of course their basement was intact and not about to cave in, so that was pretty sound. They were on like a hill, so the front of their house was the first story, and the second story, and then the back of their house was lower, so that's where the garages were and the basement was. And so, but the cars weren't parked in the garages, so those cars got destroyed, like absolutely totaled. They're covered in bricks and trees. And I helped out for a bit, and then this whole like church group came, like all these people in these orange like relief shirts, and they they literally went to that house and started helping out. So I was like, okay, so they've got tons of people here now. I'm gonna go see if I can talk to the homeowners and get their story behind it. And I went to talk to it was an elderly couple, and they were worried because their daughter had lived in the same neighborhood. She was living in the same neighborhood, and she didn't have a basement, so they were gonna put on the weather and ask her to, if she wanted to come over because they'd be safer there. And what happened was, as soon as they turned on the TV, it went out. The electricity went out. The power went out. And I'm not even sure if these communities still have power, at the recording of this video. But Tennessee's just been awesome in terms of volunteers. I mean, we're the volunteer state for a reason. But anyways, back to the story. The guy and his wife, they turned the TV on to check the weather, and immediately it went out. And then they heard, of course, everyone, when they experience a tornado, they hear the freight train. That's what it sounds like. And then the guy saw his roof starting to peel off from the inside. And yeah, that's a interesting picture. And so he and his wife ran to the they had a stairway to the basement. It wasn't like a door you opened. It was just a straight stairway. And he said he literally pushed her down the stairs and jumped in afterwards. And for a few seconds could feel the pull of the tornado start to pull them up off the ground. And he thought he was gone. He told me. He thought he was, but it only lasted for a few seconds, and then it was over. And then after a little while, he sort of peeked his head out like a muskrat, he said, from his basement. Because, of course, pretty much the whole first floor was just totaled. And to see if everything was okay. And those are probably 2 of the hardest houses that were hit in that neighborhood that I went to. Excuse me. Sorry. No, it's pretty late here when I'm recording this. But no, that house was demolished. Their daughter's okay, and they're okay, but he, they had a couch in the basement, and they were just chilling on that, resting. And he got up, and he realized there was a bunch of bloody spots. He had some good scrapes on him, for sure. Nothing too serious, but man, definitely saving his wife by pushing her down there. So I sent that to my boss, that story, got it all on, recorded it, and this is all with their permission, of course. So I'd been there. It was about like maybe 11:40 noon at that point, and he was like, "That's great, but I need more stories. Like I really appreciate you helping out, but I would like more stories." It's like okay, I'm gonna go to the different neighborhoods, get some more good stuff. So I tried to go to the Hermitage, excuse me, and traffic was really bad. All the roads that were affected were essentially closed, and traffic was just terrible. It wasn't even moving, so I got stuck there for like half an hour. And I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna go to Mount Juliet, which is more east, even more so from Nashville. Excuse me. And I went to this one neighborhood and didn't get hit very much at all, actually. It just grazed a few houses, and then it hit 2 houses pretty bad. One house that I saw, just the roof was gone, but the other house was it was still up, mind you, but very unstable. Very unstable. Most walls were down, but there were the few walls that were up were pretty unstable, so they had to like get a bulldozer to knock them down. They had just redone their kitchen before the tornado, and their whole house was just crushed. Um, the really and this one was different. This house was different from the Donaldson houses because there was no organization helping out. Right, it wasn't a whole neighborhood that was affected, so there wasn't really a whole lot of organizational help from local churches or anything that I saw there. Instead, it was the whole neighborhood that was out. They were out helping, and pretty much everyone in the neighborhood that could help was helping. And I went up and I went out to help out. And they're looking for their passports because they were going on a trip next month, and they needed their passports, and they didn't know where they were. So besides helping cleaning up all the trees that were in there, the house, the insulation was just everywhere. Besides cleaning all that up and trying to salvage what we could, we were all looking for the passports and the birth certificates of this family. Real heart-wrenching. And the interview I got with the homeowner, really heart-wrenching too. But, out of all of it, he was super thankful to his community, for coming out and helping it in every single way they could. And people were pretty, they were talking me up too. Like, they were really surprised I came out from Spring Hill. I told them who I was, who I was working for, but I was just like, hey, I was in the neighborhood, thought I could help out. Like, what can I do? And I'm happy I went and did this. I got a couple more stories, but it was just crazy. And really, heartbreaking to see all this destruction. And I wouldn't, I'll be honest, I wouldn't have gone and helped out if I wasn't asked to by my boss. But I'm glad I went out for sure. But anyways, that neighborhood, it only grazed a few houses and then really demolished a couple. And the guy told me the line that it went. So I went, because it went over a creek and then touched back down in a neighboring neighborhood. And so that's where I went next. I went to that neighborhood next, also in Mount Juliet. And man, it must be taking a lot of oxygen to be yawning so much. Jesus. No, but I went to that next neighborhood, and that was actually looked a lot better. More houses were affected. There were blue tarps all over roofs. But I went to one house that was pretty demolished. The first floor was kind of messed up. The second floor was jacked up. Part of the house wasn't even there. All the ceilings were caving in, essentially. And I couldn't stay here long either because my boss needed some more stories, and I had to go back to get ready for my other job because I work at the esports arena as well, and I had to go there later that day. And it was this nice couple who had a couple kids, and the dad wasn't even in town; he was in the UK, and so he woke up to the knowledge of the tornadoes happening, and honestly, of course, like his wife had called him, and I can't even imagine what he was going through, right? Like, he was so worried. Everyone was okay. They were being put up in like a nearby hotel. It was crazy. The majority of my time spent with them was I helped them clean out their closet, their master bedroom closet. And we mainly packed up clothes, but it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Speaking of, the roof of the closet had been torn off, like, completely. Like, it had just been gone. And most of the things that we found in the wreckage were either soaking wet from rain from the tornado or, just devastated by the wind, right? But the roof was torn off, and on the very top shelf of his closet, this guy had, like, on top of the shelf, like, it was the roof, and then it was this item, and then it was the shelf. He had all his records birth certificates, social security cards, everything was up there on that shelf. And he told me he also had a, sort of the stereotypical German guy you picture when they have lederhosen on. And they have like a hat, right? He had one of those hats, one of those German hats, laying on top of the records. And then the tornado blew over and ripped the roof off of that closet. And the craziest thing, I'm going to tell you, those records were untouched. That hat was still there on top of the binder. It was a binder full of records, and then a light German hat on top of that, kind of like a fedora, but not really. And the roof was ripped off by the wind, but somehow, and there was insulation everywhere, by the way, but for some reason, the records and this German hat lay untouched, and I swear to God, I don't know how. I honestly don't know how. But that was awesome for them. I'm so glad that they were able to find that, really, because that'd be so much harder without it. But I kind of went on a tangent here, talking about my experience. That's the last story I have to share about the tornadoes, right? Because I had to go home and after that. But it just makes me want to do more often, right? Not then. I was beat. I was beat then, but look, when more of this sort of stuff happens, your friends going through a rough time, like I want to be that person that's there for them. Just because it's a terrible thing to go through, something like that, and I know it's made me rethink a lot of things. It has for sure. And that's not the reason I haven't, me doing that is not the reason that I couldn't record an episode for this week with a guest or record an episode last week with a guest. That's not an excuse for me, but it is, a lot to deal with for sure. For sure. But anyways, going back to the topic at hand, I'm going to be doing a better job making sure I can get, guests on here. The thing is, it's really hard when a guest the morning of you're scheduled to, like, it's hard because you try to find a date where you're all ready to go. And the date I had was, the Tuesday before the Wednesday I release. So the day before I release, that afternoon is when that guy said he was going to be here. All right, he's going to be here. I get a text in the morning of saying he can't be here anymore. Well, fuck. I'm kind of out of luck there, right? So, of course, try to get people be like, hey, would you like to be on the podcast? This guy bailed on me. I'd love to talk to you about this, and this topic. Because I still want to sort of plan an episode out right before I just do anything. But alas, I was not able to get anyone. So you have me and my tornado stories. But we'll move on from that. I've got a few interesting ideas on where I want Saber-X Studios to go, and that'll be coming up after the break. Make sure to stay tuned here on Juice It Up. Hey guys, welcome back to Juice It Up. Last time we checked in, I was talking about some tornado stories and some moments that really changed my life, for better or for worse, just really affected me. Something I wanted to let you know about. And that hasn't really influenced my decisions now, but I definitely have a direction I see Saber-X Studios going. And I kind of wanted to share it with you and see your response about it. Essentially, I still plan on doing the podcast every week. I want to sort of turn this into a full-time gig. Not just the podcast. I want to turn Saber-X Studios into a YouTube and a Twitch endeavor. Essentially, I want to get a house of friends together and start creating content every day. Or every weekday, excuse me. And, that's hard right now for me. I live in Spring Hill, and most of my friends live in, closer to Nashville or north of Nashville. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for me to do that, right? I can't really reliably get my friends to record things with me. And it makes it really hard to sort of consistently create content, which is to make something like this sustainable, you kind of have to do. And for any of you wondering, like, what the hell is he talking about? It'd be sort of like a Game Grumps or an Alpha Red, Friends Without Benefits sort of thing. Essentially, what would happen is it would be me and 3 friends, and we would create content every day. So over the weekend, we would record, us playing like a multiplayer game like Mario Party or Smash Brothers or something. And then we would release a clip of that on YouTube each weekday. So you'd have 5 videos that week for that. Then we would also do, or maybe more, depending on how long it is. We can cut it up in a longer segment or shorter segments and like 10, 15-minute segments, and depending on how long you get what I'm saying. And then like on Twitch, we would have specific things we do. So like Monday night, it could be like, oh, hey, this person's going to be streaming this. So like it wouldn't be we were all together. It could be like we all have our own separate functions we do for that organization, for Saber-X Studios. And they're like their little own show. So it's sort of really, I want Saber-X Studios to become sort of like a channel, right? Does that make sense? Like usually you see channels center around one kind of content, really specializing in that one sort of genre, and you don't really see any stray from that. Like we usually take Good Mythical Mornings, for example. They have a whole channel dedicated to their morning show, Good Mythical Morning. But then for any other videos, they just have separate channels, Good Mythical More and Good Mythical, whatever they have. But for Saber-X Studios, and it might be smarter to do it the other way, but to start out, I want to at least try Saber-X Studios be the main thing, and then each separate episode would be its own sort of subgenre, its own playlist, right? And I understand wanting to separate those into separate channels because that way you don't clutter everyone's feed with all of your content that they may or may not want, right? That way they can just subscribe to the content they want and not subscribe from the content they don't want. But I feel like in the future, this will be better. Just to have one central channel that has, everything around it, and then being able to have separate different, series within that channel. So, for instance, so it's me and 3 other friends. So Monday night on Twitch, we could do, we all play Magic the Gathering Commander or something like that. And then Tuesday night would be, oh, here's me and one of the other friends streaming a game on Tuesday nights. Then Wednesday nights, oh, hey, it's the other 2 streaming something. Oh, it's Thursday night, that's Dungeons & Dragons night. We're all doing a D&D campaign. Oh, Friday night, we're doing yada yada. You get the idea. And then we would highlight all those things and then put the highlights onto YouTube the next day. And so that way we're having, 2 to 3, maybe even 4 videos a day on YouTube. And then we're having content each day on Twitch as well. So then the bigger the following you get, the more sustainable that becomes, right? And then we would obviously upgrade and do things better the more we do it. That would just be the plan. And that's sort of what I want Saber-X Studios to turn into, right? Right now it's the podcast, Juice It Up. And I love juicing it up. Shoutouts to all my 0 sponsors. But I definitely want to sort of turn it into something like that. Now, how doable that is with everything I want to do, right, is interesting. I want to do, first off, I need a job to support myself, right? And I might be getting to a spot in my career as a radio board operator that I could possibly do that, support myself with just that. And then I could do this on the side. Essentially, whoever is in the house with me, I've already got a few friends in mind that I want. Essentially, whoever does that, that wouldn't be their main gig to start out, right? Because that's not sustainable just as starting out. It has to grow into something. And so we would essentially all of our own day jobs. For instance, I work at the radio. So I would work at the radio stations if I get that set schedule, right? And then when I'm not working there, I would be working on this. So it's kind of like burning the candle at both ends a little bit. But that's only if I try to do a lot of other stuff as well. And that unfortunately includes Smash in a lot of that. So I don't know. I'm in a weird part of my life where I want to do this one thing, but I might have to take out other parts. I don't know. It's a crazy thing. You guys ever deal with that where you feel like you want to add more to your plate, but it's already so full? I mean, you can only take so many servings at the Thanksgiving dinner before it's too much, right? Before you've bitten off more than you can chew. I've done that before, and I don't like doing that. Biting off more than I can chew. I know my limits, and I feel like if I do this, I'll have to cut something off that I don't want to. So no, I'm just kind of just thinking out loud, right? I don't know. But that's the idea. That's where I want Saber-X Studios to go to. And of course, I'll still be doing the podcast each week. That's still the plan. And speaking of, I've got a special guest coming for you next week. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. You hear that? So make sure you get excited about that. Thank you guys for choosing to juice it up, letting me, rant for a little while, giving you my inner thoughts about everything, sharing my stories with you, just kind of, telling you where I want the future of this to go. And I hope you're okay with that, right? And you're on board with that. Yeah, I really appreciate all you guys watching, all your support, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Make sure to wash your hands always, and whether it's coronavirus or not, just wash your hands. Just a good, it's a good model to live life by. No, but appreciate all your support, and I hope to see you soon.